We have come to chapter 3 of ethics, or understanding ethics from a Christian perspective, and we be looking at the Old Testament foundations of ethics. We'll deal with the following contents: introduction, the Bible and its importance, God's established order, the creation story, the patriarchs, Egyptian slavery and redemption, the Decalogue, the nation of Israel, worship and priesthood, Israel kings, that is Saul, David and others. We'll look at the prophets and then we'll make a conclusion. Why do we need to look at the Old Testament? It is believed that many people look at the Old Testament in order to invoke or to appeal to God through the Old Testament teachings in matters of ethics and morality. The Bible and its relevance. Why is the Bible so relevant? What is it? Say the Bible comes from the word biblia, which is Latin word, or biblion, Greek word, and is believed to be a collection of books. So the question is it full of myth, legends, or traditional stories, and therefore irrelevant stories or mistakes? We can prove the Bible to be true through the following. Archaeology. Archaeology is a scientific term which applies to people who study ancient remains of human habitation, how they lived, how they believed, what they did. Secondly, to present Jesus' words. We see Jesus engaging the Bible in teaching the Old Testament. Then history, which history in some cases have been carried out by word of the mouth, or it has been documented from those who are non-religious. They are not Jewish, they are not Christians, but they are dealing with natural history. Then about current events. What is happening today? And you relate them and you find that really what happens today or in history has something to do or to be connected to the Old Testament. For example, archaeologists, especially the Egyptologists, who have discovered a lot of evidence providing the Bible stories, and some of the evidence deal with the leadership of Egypt during that time, like the pharaohs. It looks at the pyramids which were constructed during the Israelite captivity in Egypt. Then also we have evidence. Jesus believed the stories in the Old Testament, and therefore he would refer to them when he was teaching, like the story of Jonah, which we find in Matthew chapter 12 verse 40, the story of Noah's Ark, Matthew chapter 24 verse 27. All these have been referred to bring about the belief that these things happen. They are not just mere stories. But also we look at the Israel-Palestine conflict, which is still ongoing for years, where the Israelites are fighting, claiming for the land which was promised to them and delivered to them through the leadership of Moses and Joshua. Then also it takes us to look at the established order, creation. We say creation is the work of God. And this creation is a story. But much as it is a story, we look at things which contain this story. Human beings, animals, plants, the surrounding, the environment. We look at the earth, we look at the heavens, and all those things that we see there have been put in place in an orderly manner. It is not like when you look at, take an example where you find a stone crusher, where stones have been blasted and they fall at random. Anywhere they fall in any way, they have no order of placement. But when you look at the heavens, you see there are stars, there is the sun, and there is the moon. Those are visible. You see that they are in order. The sun does not cross from its orbit, neither does the moon. They have been placed in their continuous journey throughout the life since creation. This brings us to look at what we call spiritual science, which brings about the Bible study. What do we study in the Bible? We study that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Things had a beginning, which started with God. God is a name given to the Creator. Things were not, but God put them in place and in order. And here God is defined by Thomas Aquinas as the unmoved mover. God does not move, but He moves the creation. Meaning there is a purpose for everything. When God created, He put these elements of creation in their own habitation and gave them the order of living, how they should live, how they act, how they behave, and how they relate. When God's order is disrupted, there are consequences. If you look at your own way of doing things, if you arranged your table or your house in a certain orderly manner, and then somebody comes and disrupts that order, there will be consequences. One on your side, secondly on the side of the one who disrupted the order. Because for you to try to locate where some of the things you need are, and you will not find them. It will consume your time. It will also absorb your patience, and you change the way how you talk. But also the person who disrupts the order, if you discover and know, then there will be issues between you and the person. So God has put things in order where they should be and for a purpose. This leads us to look at God's attributes, what we attribute to God to be. One is omniscient, all-knowing. He knows everything. What He created, He knows what it is, what it does, and how it feels. He's all-knowing, omniscient. Then we say He's omnipotent, all-powerful, all-living, ever. You see, He created without the help of any other person. Nothing He looked for in order to create. And ever since He created, He has remained in control. So He is all-powerful. The universe, all over, He takes care and control. He is omnipresent. He is present everywhere. Everywhere. You go in the Arctic Circle, you'll find there are people who live there, God is there. You go just like David was putting it in some of his Psalms, that when he goes down into Sheol, God is there. In space, God is there. In the seas, God is there. In the space, everywhere, omnipresent. So there is nothing that passes his knowledge. But then we say he is also beneficent. He is totally good, very good. And when you read Genesis chapter 1, you find that whatever he created, he saw it was good, based on his standard of goodness. So what is to create? Here we have these pictures. You can see somebody putting something in hands, trying to formulate something. Some people doubt if all things were created in 7 days. But whatever the case might be, whether 7 days or how many days, all we need to acknowledge is that there was an origin for everything, and there is a design, an order observable in all creation. That one is not disputed because we can see it in our present time. I gave an example where the moon and stars and the sun stay, where we are. He has created boundaries for seas and oceans. They don't go beyond those boundaries. He has created animals in their own habitation and so on and so forth. And this order is observable. This takes us to look at the goodness of creation. Sometimes we need to take time and look at yourself, look at your environment. And this brings the idea of ontological or ontology, which gives us God's own being. What we see gives us who God is. If you go into your home and look at some of our works really are human. If you look at the carpenter, you look at, every work resembles the professional ideas that have been put in based on our human being. So when you look at what is in the house is built, they will tell us about our own being. But then, beyond that, we know that what we do has been accorded to us, granted us by God. And then it determines moral or morality, which is God's justice or righteousness. God is morally righteous. He is justice. He is upright. So in this case, sometimes there are people who have been convinced to blame God for the wrongs that take place. God is not responsible for the wrongs, the bitterness, the hardships in the world, because when you read the Bible carefully, the Old Testament, you'll know that the pain we face, the challenges are based on our failure to recognize God's order, God's justice in creation. Then we talk about ethicity, which means God's beauty and perfection. That's why I said, if you look at yourself, you are so beautiful. You look at the world around us, so beautiful and perfect. Because we said everything that God created had a purpose. And therefore, in his creation, that perfection brings the purpose out. But when we fail to perfect what God has put in place, then it brings failures, pain, and suffering. And because God is beautiful and perfect, he has made a beautiful world and a perfect world. Humans are unique compared to all other animals. Why? Because they have that creativity in them that brings out perfectness and beauty. No other species of animals, including the apes, are able to create and understand images of art and drawing. Human beings can draw and can build houses. And when a house is built and is not looking nice, they will destroy, they demolish. But animals do not have that perspective of beauty. They don't have that kind of creativity. There is no image of beauty in these animals, but human beings can understand this image of art and drawing and appreciate beauty. Then consciousness. Human consciousness is a mystery that has evaded decades of intensive research by neurophysiologists. They cannot understand conscience, how it works, how it exists. It is not something that you can get physically and hand over. It is something existing in a chain of reactions, and therefore it brings about our conscience, but it has evaded decades of intensive research by neurophysiologists. And therefore this brings us what we call personality. Another thing that makes human beings unique is the personality, who you are, what determines character, what determines behavior. According to Joseph Ledoux, a neuroscientist at New York University, he says, we have no idea how our brains make us who we are. That's why there is a system, a chain maybe of reaction that makes our brain think and put things in order. But that thing is not physical, it is not tangible. It is a chain of reactions within the brain that brings out what we think and do. There is as yet no neuroscience of personality. We have little understanding of how art and history are experienced by the brain. You look at things, then the sight translates them into what we call brain, and the brain makes pictures that even when we are no longer looking at them with our eyes, we can see them. We can see them. Therefore, it is something that is very, very difficult for us to understand how we experience, or how the brain experiences them. The meltdown of mental life is psychosis, which is still a mystery. In short, we have yet to come up with a theory that can put all this together so that we can understand ourselves better. This brings us to look at what we call abstract thinking. Is the human brain that is much different from that of our closest relatives, the chimpanzees? Is the human brain that is much different from the closest friends of ours we call the chimpanzees? According to Daniel J. Povenel from the University of Louisiana, New Iberia Research Center, he says, humans constantly involve unobservable phenomena and variables to explain why certain things are happening. Chips operate in the world of concrete, that is tangible things that can be seen, so they don't think in abstract. For us, you can sit and think and imagine, but chips have been studied not to have imagination. The content of their minds is about the observable world. What they see is what makes the content of their minds. But human beings, we can imagine things and begin deliberating on them. So this takes us to look at the constitution of body, soul, and spirit. Number one, body only. It is believed that the lower life forms include reptiles, amphibians, fish, and invertebrates. For them, they have body only. That's how they live. They can't think, they can't imagine. 2. There are those creatures which have body and soul. From the Hebrew, nephesh, or soulish creatures, which includes birds and mammals. These can think. They can look at things and identify. You see? Number 3, there are those creatures which have body, soul, and spirit. And these are humans and angels. They have body, soul, and spirit. The spirit is the part of humans that is able to love and experience God directly. It is found in no other animals species, since no other species can experience God or form a relationship with God. Moral judgments. After Adam and Eve had sinned, they became like God in that they could distinguish good from evil. They have the ability to make moral judgments, which is also a characteristic that is found in only human beings. Even the higher apes cannot make moral judgment about the behavior of other animals. For example, when we are together as human beings, you can determine what is morally right and what is morally wrong within the community of fellow human beings, what you should do and not to do. But these animals cannot. They can defecate, they can fight, they can do any other things without having a moral judgment. If, for example, a human being goes and harvests another person's garden, there is a feeling of wrong having harvested a garden that does not belong to you. But animals, when they see a garden that is ready, they will go in, eat, and destroy. They don't have that moral judgment that the owner will be aggrieved. So this is a picture of human brain with these rays, which may represent what we call neurons connecting different parts of the body, and they come to the brain. The brain is one of the complicated parts of the body to understand, as we said earlier. The human brain is the center of the human nervous system. The nervous system is that one that connects all parts of the body to act and respond to what the body requires. It is estimated for a number of neurons to exist in the human brain, ranging from 80 to 120 billion nerves. And those are very many. Very hard to observe unless you use microscopes. Human mind. A mind is the complex of cognitive faculties that enables consciousness, to be conscious of what is around you, heat or coldness, or you feel something is around you even when you don't see, or you have a conscience to think about others, So consciousness, thinking, reasoning, should I do this or not do this? If I do it, what comes out? Perception, perceiving things that can be befitting for human habitation or relationship. And judgment, you judge whether this is good for you or not good for you or for others. A characteristic of human beings, these are making human character, but which are also may apply to some other forms of life. So the mind is frequently synonymous with thought. Somebody can say, my mind is telling me like this. And then you say, I think like this. So they are synonymous, thought and mind. In other words, mind would be the center of thoughts, which is part of the brain. So we want to turn to some people whom we can refer to in the Old Testament to help us understand what we would want to know. And before we do, we'll stop for a break and we come back later.